I don't know who can hear me. A couple of people are muted.
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Jennifer, I just want to say that when I try to click video, it says, well, let me tell you what it says. It says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it. So somehow you've deactivated our ability to do video,
Weird.
and I can't help you from there.
I don't know. I haven't done anything to disable anybody's video.
Anybody else do video?
I have the same thing that you get.
Huh,
Me too.
that's weird. Okay, so let's see. Start video. Here, let me try this. Hold on. So I have this thing where I can ask you to start your video. Are you able to do that? There.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Got everybody. Okay, just about everybody. So we need a few more people to get started, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more person.
I was just at the Conservation Commission meeting, and Bob Douglas is going to be delayed because they're currently meeting. He wanted to just relay that.
Okay. And Jim's here, right?
Yes.
Eric said he'd be here. Steve said he would. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we need one more person. Well, while we're waiting, how's everyone feeling?
Doing well. Thank
Good.
you. How did you enjoy the town meeting, Jennifer?
Oh, well, you know, I enjoyed the brevity of it.
Wasn't it nice? 5
Yes.
minutes, 10 minutes.
Oh, good. Here's Shannon. This might be Eric's here. Good. Who is Shannon's dad, I wonder?
That's Steve Sullivan.
Oh, okay. Hi, Steve. Let me get them to be. Okay, good. So I think we have a quorum here now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can get started. I will say just for the record that those present at 7:33 are myself, Jennifer Wallace, Charlene Galinsky, Steve Sullivan, Tom Seifert, Eric Stalker, Jim Moore, and Tracy McNaughton. So we have an agenda which I have sent to everyone. Do you think there's a necessity to review that agenda, or can we just move on through it, or do you think it's a requirement to read the items on the agenda?
Every meeting I go to, they do review it briefly.
Okay. All right, I can go through it.
Yeah.
Okay, so first order of business after we do this will be to review the minutes from July 11th. I don't think there are any members of the public here, so we don't need a public comment period. I wanted to touch base and make sure that everyone is all okay with me remaining the coordinator. That was something that I mentioned last time, but we didn't really make a decision on that. I wanted to finalize the contact information list. Charlene requested in addition to the agenda that we spend some time talking about the liaison role from the Lake Wyola Association to the task force. I have not much of an update, but a little bit on the request through Becky to meet with the MVP representative. I was hoping we could spend a good chunk of time talking about our impressions and observations from reading that FERCOG report. And hopefully moving through to what we might do next with that. And I have a section here called other business and then a motion to adjourn. So that's our agenda. Okay, so without any further discussion, then we can move to the minutes, which I've sent to you all. Tom has made a suggestion about the minutes, but why don't I receive comments from the group first? Were there any changes or issues with the minutes that you'd like us to attend to? Okay, so Tom, do you want to express some of your thoughts about the minutes? I will add that Tom did write to me with some corrections, typos, and also a good suggestion, which is to, if someone is speaking and I record that in the minutes, to indicate which one of us is speaking, so it's clear from the minutes. But Tom, you had some other suggestions, I think.
Yeah, I don't have my message in front of me, but I remember mentioning names and just the typos. I think in the minutes themselves this time, that was all I remember talking about, but I also wanted to offer any help or contribution to preparing them or using the video record. I know for some other committees that I'm familiar with, sometimes the person making the minutes will just do it from the video afterwards, because during the meeting it can be a distracting task
Yeah,
to keep track of that. Is that the type of things you're remembering that I wrote? Because that's what I'm remembering.
Well,
That's the other thing I wrote.
yeah, I mean, I did, that's the way I recorded the
Oh,
minutes.
and
I watched it, but you had the suggestion
yeah,
of
I
doing it
also,
as a Google doc.
a shared Google Doc. Thank you. That was the other thing. And it keeps track of all the changes. That way, before this meeting, people can contribute any changes, and it's already established in the document that we're discussing here. So people can look at it just a few minutes before the meeting per se, and know the current status of it. So, and it keeps track of all the changes if there's questions or whatnot to undo. Because when I did it tonight or this morning, before I sent it to you, I realized like, oh, I'm kind of creating a new document potentially.
Yeah,
It's nicer just to have the one file, but I don't know, there could be cons to it. It seems to work for a couple committees.
I don't know how others of you feel. I feel mostly not fluent in Google Docs, first of all. And second of all, there was something that was a little funky in my mind about everyone weighing in and adding comments to minutes when those might not be shared realizations from the group of those changes. I was feeling like we do this, we talk about if anyone had things that they recalled from the meeting or they think that should be in the minutes. Tracy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, are you meaning that we just put comments in, or can we change the text? Because it would, if we did it that way, it would have to me, you would need to put it in as a comment as opposed to making a change to whoever typed it up originally.
Right.
I also, think that, the minutes, as far as detail goes, the general, gist of what was said seems to be the most important thing, and not having to type up like, everything that was said in the recording, because that's just a lot of work for most of the time. Everybody's like, yeah, sure, the minutes are great. And the person who's written them has done a ton of time on it. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Charlene.
I'm the clerk for the Lake Wyola Association, and I do the minutes for that group. And I do know when when I took on that responsibility, I did a little bit of research to see, how do you write minutes and what do you include and what don't you include. And one of the things, well, two of the important things that I got from it is you should be cautious about putting names in. So what I do with our minutes is if a board of director brings up, for instance, Bob Blanchett always reviews our financials. I'll always say Bob Blanchett reviews. But other than that, if other people say things, I try very hard not to include names. And then the other thing is with minutes, a very important thing to be cautious of is to, if people want to change the minutes, that information must have been shared at the meeting. It can't be added after the fact, because then you don't have everyone knowing what is being added. So that's a huge piece of that minute taking. I just wanted to let you know.
So my feeling is, since I'm not fluent in Google Docs and I don't really want to get up to speed on using Google Docs when there's so much other business, if it works okay with you all to submit the minutes to you in an email attachment, and then we discuss it and make any additions or corrections here in this meeting, that's the way I'm used to working. But Eric's hand is up. You're muted, Eric.
You'd think I'd know after all these years. Anyway, I think the general concept of that the person who takes the minutes should be the one doing all the editing is true. I'm not sure, but I think I sort of heard Tom just suggest that he'd be willing to be the secretary of these meetings. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but if he did, I think that's fantastic. And then away we go from there. And Tom sends out the minutes. People have something, they can say it, and then I agree to meet the next meeting. That's when you actually adjust the minutes, and everyone agrees on what we're adjusting them to.
Okay, so Tom, was that an offer?
Eric's a really perceptive person.
Well, I don't know.
I would gladly offer. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, it's yours.
Thank you. Okay.
So on that score, are there any additions to the minutes that I sent out?
Was
Any
Eric saying
changes?
something?
Oh, Eric, are you still talking?
No, just I'm not surprised you did that, and I think, and great that you did. That's all.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, that is helpful. Thank you. So any changes, any issues, anything about this week's or last meeting's minutes that should be attended to? All right, good. Okay, so how about anyone want to take over the coordinator role?
Oh, excuse me, I think what we have to do now is somebody has to make a motion to accept the minutes and then it gets seconded.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly right.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
I'll
Who
second.
wants second? Okay, accepted minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain because I was not here, but I will
Okay.
abstain.
Okay,
Deferred aye.
one abstention.
Yeah, when it's a Zoom meeting, you have to do a roll call for everything.
Oh, yeah, I'm just getting up to speed on that. So should we redo this? Yeah. Okay, so Eric Stocker,
Abstain.
abstain. Jennifer Wallace, aye. Jim Moore,
Good, yes.
Tracy McNaughton,
Aye.
Tom Seifert,
Aye.
Charlene Galinsky,
Aye.
Stephen Sullivan.
Abstain.
Okay, 2 abstentions. Okay, so I'm going to reach out to Eric, Stephen, and Bob for your contact information, if you're open to that, just to circulate between us in case we need to reach each other by phone rather than email. Or the first meeting, we had a power outage, so we were all scurrying, trying to find out what we could do, and sending a text message or a phone message might be more efficient if that's okay with you. So I'll send you a separate note to collect your information, and then I'll circulate that. Okay. So that brings us to Charlene, your interest in mentioning something about the liaison role between Lake Wyola Association and the task force.
Right. I just wanted to have a good understanding with the committee that my role is not to represent, and for instance, if something comes up that requires a decision that maybe the Lake Wyola Association would in the future have to make, I cannot make that decision as a lone body on this particular committee. So just an understanding that I will take information from here that is pertinent for the Lake Wyola Association and share it with them as the liaison, but I will not represent them as a whole body for any particular matter unless it's something that is decided later that comes to a meeting where the Lake Wyola Association has had time to discuss it.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Any other feedback for Charlene on that? Tom?
Yeah, I was confused. I thought from the agenda item
Order
it was-
the extension or the expiration date told. And so currently it's set
Bob, you're
to
not muted.
expire in January 2025, right in the middle of the drawdown.
Okay, I
okay.
just muted him.
Oh, thanks. I misunderstood the agenda topic. I thought it was going to be about the role of the liaison from the task force, excuse me, from Lake Wyola Association to the task force. I didn't understand that the task force would have a liaison to the Lake Wyola Association because I thought the task force would just speak as the task force in any communications to anyone.
And that's what I meant to, that I will just take information back that is pertinent to the Lake Wyola Association, or it could be vice versa. If they have questions, which, you know, they may or may not, then I certainly can bring those to the task force.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I don't think we need a person to bring our messaging to the Lake Wyola Association because we can just communicate with them directly. I thought that the role you were talking about was whether you would represent what they had to bring to us.
Well, I think what created confusion for me at the last meeting, and I was in error, I sent you an email and I sent Tracy one as well as Jen. There was a lot of discussion about the open meeting, and I made a comment which was incorrect in that I hadn't passed it by the Lake Wyola Association. So that's what I'm referring to. I will not speak on their behalf because I am just one of the 13 directors, and that is not my role to guess what they might be thinking. So I just wanted it clear that I won't be making any decisions for the Lake Wyola Association if they should come up at this meeting, and I'm sure they won't, but I wanted it to be a known fact.
Yeah, that leaves me questioning what the liaison means, if it's really a necessary like role.
You
Because
don't, I mean, I can say nothing. I mean, I'll tell you what we do, Tom. We have a section on our agenda every single time we have a meeting, which is an update on town meetings that are held. Some people watch conservation meetings, some people watch select board meetings, and you know, in my case, I'm at the task force meeting, and we just share something we heard at the meeting, just to keep everybody on the same page, especially people who aren't living at the lake full time. So it really is I think one of the goals for the Lake Wyola Association is to try to work collaboratively with the town. And one way you can do that is to basically know what's going on. So we do have that on our agenda every week. And it's a good thing because obviously not everyone goes to all the meetings. And if it's something that involves lake information, it's good to know. So that's basically the purpose of it. So if this group doesn't want me to act on by reviewing what is said in the minutes, for instance, if it's particular to the Lake Wyola Association, obviously you wouldn't do the whole meeting. Then I don't need to do that. But
well, we're a public body and every meeting is open to them. So I just don't understand the need for a liaison from the task force to the LWA.
Okay,
It feels like it's an extra
Okay, we can,
I'm going to speak up here now. You know, in my solicitation of participation in this task force, I approached Charlene as a member of the board, someone who lives here, understands, travels the roads. You know, it doesn't need to be like a big thing about liaison. Is it needed? Is it not needed? She's a person, a resident who has some valuable contributions to make to the discussion about this partnership that we're trying to create. So I don't want to make especially a lot of time in our meeting about debating, is it okay to have a liaison? Is it not? What's their role? Charlene announced in the last meeting that as the board, they decided it was a good idea to have someone who was more informed about what was going on at the town level. And that was something that she was interested in doing, not just for our task force, but in other instances. So that was my understanding, Charlene, that was what liaison meant, is that, and I would hate to have you just be like a passive observer who's sharing information, you know, I mean, I think you have a
and
valuable
I,
contribution.
right, and maybe Tom, you're looking at that position as more formalized than I'm looking at it, and Jen's looking at it. It's just, I guess I can look at it as a contact person. Because, you know, I do go to all the meetings and I do the minutes, but
Yeah, I
that,
just see it as a contact person for the association. I just don't see it as a contact person for us to the association. And I think it's important that you share what you witness at these meetings. Any official message we would ever create for the LWA wouldn't come through you, it would just come from the whole task force.
That's correct, yeah.
So I think it would be great if you were actively telling them what's going on with us, but it's not official messaging, I guess. And I thought the liaison might be something that, you know, only the liaison gives official messages across. So I just wanted to make
oh,
sure.
no. And I wasn't trying to infer that it would be official
Mhm.
at all.
Thanks, that clears it up.
Okay, good. So any other comments on that topic? Okay. All right. So at the last meeting, we talked about approaching Becky to enlist her services to approach the representatives from the MVP grant. Becky's feeling, in her exact words, was it sounds like a big ask, but that she was going to ask anyway, which she has done twice, but hasn't heard anything back about their interest or willingness to come and meet with us. Same thing with FERCog. FERCog did say in a communication to Mark Rivers that they were glad that the task force existed and would be happy to come and talk with us. But they haven't been able to respond to Becky either. So those two things are out there and I'll keep following up with them. I did want to say, from looking at the MVP website, that there is a lot, they have a lot of resources that we could check into. I think I sent you their web link, but there are webinars, they have conferences where they're discussing different community projects that are now in the works. So you get a sense of what they funded and what the status and what their thoughts and about those projects are. There's a couple of toolkits that involve cost catalogs for structural improvements. They have quite a lot of resources there. And also I did learn that mid-March of 2025 will be the next deadline, so to speak, for new applications for the next round of MVP grants. So I'm going to encourage us to to really look at the resources that they have there. Some of them will apply to some of the stuff that we might be thinking of, others not, but it's pretty good resource. Tracy.
Yes, so two things. Last meeting, Bob Douglas, who unfortunately they rescheduled the Conservation Commission meeting and moved it to tonight, which is what we were trying to avoid in the first place. But he's applied for several MVP grants, and he said that he would be willing to talk us through the process that he's been through and kind of, his experience and how that works. In addition, and Eric, maybe this is something that you can jump on, a couple LWAC meetings ago, I feel like it was like April or May, Dave Green said that he was going to send all of us the MVP grant application. He said he had it at work and he would get it to us. So if you wouldn't mind reminding him of that, because it would be nice to see the MVP grant that the town applied for. I know they didn't get it, but at least we can see one. It would just even that would be nice to familiarize ourselves with what it looks like, what it is.
Can I just jump in and say that we have actually just like last week in a meeting received an MVP grant, and I think we've tried maybe 3 years before this. So we've actually got a grant for, I think, and don't quote me on this. I'm in Pennsylvania. My brain's not all connected here, but I'm not in front of not at my desk. But I believe that the grant was for $225,000, maybe $250, for solar panels on the new library and an electric pickup truck, which will act as a backup for the backup battery source for the new library. So it's hard to, I guess the takeaway from that to me is A, it's hard to get those grants, and B, we just got one. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean for the future. I have no idea, but I thought I'd mention that.
That's good. Mark, I see your hand is up. Let me just say, I don't, I'm a little bit more incremental kind of in my approach to these things. So it feels to me like, sure, the MVP program is a great resource. It's definitely not the only resource. And
correct,
to just assume that we're going to jump on this MVP grant, well, we don't even know what the projects are that we might want funding for and what we might apply for. So I'm put the brakes on a little bit to go, let's get into the weeds with what these projects are that we might want to recommend to the select board. Also, we can't act independently of the select board on this, right? We make a recommendation to them. So that's what I'm hoping for. And we have the MVP resource out there and we should learn about it, but feels like there are other steps. Mark.
I believe that the MVP grants are on the website already, are on the town website already.
That's great.
So if you go to the town administrators page, I believe you'll see them there.
That's great. Okay, so now into the meat of things. I am hoping that we'll have a good discussion about what our impressions are of what FERCog has recommended. I did a summary of their findings that is just a little bit more, actually a lot more compressed, just hoping that that could help us to get an eyeball on, well, what are their findings when it comes to, they have divided it into structural best management practices. Okay, but let's just call it structural projects, non-structural projects, and educational projects. And I have that summary, which I could screen share if it's useful, or we could just share impressions or things that jumped out to us, or I'm not sure what you think would be the most productive. Yes.
I'm just wondering, is this the newest and latest FERCog report, or is there one that we just haven't seen yet?
Yeah, there still is one that DEP is looking at. From what I've heard from Mark, and he's here so he can chime in, it didn't sound like there were big differences in what DEP was looking at, but we do have to be aware that what we're looking at and reporting on is still in a draft form. So what's useful now? I could put that summary up there, or we could just talk about general impressions. I see Tracy has her hand up.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the summary that you put together, which is findings, areas with issues to be addressed, pages 43 to 48. And then there also was, at the last meeting, we talked about looking at sites 4 and 6. So these are different, right? The summary is, well, incorporates Locks Pond, well, there is some Locks Pond in here, and I think there was some, oh, there's Wendell Road too, but there's also Lake Wyola Association owned road. So I guess maybe we should pick where we want to focus in, which place or something.
Well, that's kind of what the reason for the summary was, in that I don't know that we're ready to pick where we want to focus yet, because even though we talked about Wendell Road last time, the kinds of things that were recommended for Wendell Road were so minimal. And I wondered whether it was substantial enough, but
I just meant focusing in on your summary, or focusing in on the other two sites that you want us to look at, just as a
Right.
starting point for tonight. I don't mean like,
yeah, I'm not sure. Jim, you have an idea?
Oh, okay. Well, I did walk Wendell Road and then the Locks Pond Road from Lakeview up to the boat launch. So that I'm ready to talk about those. And with regard to both their suggestions and the current state, which some of the reviews, especially the older review that said things were done or not done, or wasn't quite current, I guess. But you know, if I could just sort of, you know, from the result of the walk, and that start with Wendell Road, because Wendell Road is in actually pretty good shape. I think it's still in good shape because of the it being serving as a detour in that period. There are a couple points where berms could be added to keep runoff from heading downhill. It would be, you know, useful to figure out if something could be done at the Laurels to get the water from starting downhill. That would be right near the road. The other thing, and I think a major thing, was Laurel Straits, which I don't know who owns that road, if it's a
You mean
town.
Watson Straits?
It depends on what map you look at. That yes, the sign on the road says Watson Straits, but Google and other maps call it Laurel Straits. So that I did go there. I walked a couple 100 feet down the road. And from that road, you can easily at many places see the lake. It is that close. And in many places it sits just above Shore Drive. And just one instance is when you first turn down, we'll call it Watson Straits, there's an erosion gully that's probably 8 to 10 inches deep and a 1.5 to 2 feet wide, just right in the middle, heading down that road to the lower side to head down the hill. And that's kind of interesting because there's a culvert that's on the road that's 20 feet before that turnoff. And it may be that that culvert is feeding that erosion, or don't know exactly what's going on. It's just, and I did walk down. There are a couple places where berms would prevent things from heading downhill. But I'm claim no expertise in what needs to be done. And I didn't walk all the way to the end because I'm under the impression that some of the Wendell Road properties have Watson Straits as their end of the property line, so that it was, you know, going by people's property that I didn't feel comfortable with. But I think it's a big area for us to look at. I think it would solve some of the problems that come up on Shore Drive by if we could just cut how much water comes off of that and heads towards shore. It would, you know, change some of the requests we have for what gets done on Shore Drive, although it wouldn't solve all of them.
Stephen has his hand up.
Yes, I do.
Hi, Stephen.
So if the water doesn't get off of Wendell Road, where am I gonna put it? Because it needs to go somewhere, and the more water that sits on dirt roads, the more potholes we get, the more rutting we get, and then I have very unhappy residents.
the kind of response. You're right, that there are a couple of places, and I skipped over them, where holes can be cut for runoff to go downhill and disperse it that way, rather than having it go down just a few locations. The part that's going down Watson Straits is a problem. The parts that going down Wendell or the Laurels is another problem. And I think there are a couple places where a cut where water could head off the road are possible. So yes, you're right, that you just can't keep the water on the road.
So the idea, the best idea is to really not have any berms and to get the water to just go off the road all the way along, because then you're not getting any like streams. You're getting it to run off gently everywhere. But once you focus it, then that's where you get that Watson Straits thing and everywhere else that we have the water run off. So it's really better to have it a widespread area instead of focusing it.
Well, I would agree, other than there are uphills and downhills, so that at the bottom of those areas, it does concentrate. That's where I was thinking of putting in those cuts, let it go from the low areas on the road.
Tracy, let me, Stephen, I have a clarification question just so I understand. So what you're saying is that, I guess it's more like a ditch that runs parallel to the road that you think is the best method for dealing with that?
And some
or-
places where you enable water to get off the road and down the hill. There's lots of areas there where people aren't living, and we could use it as places for water to get off the road.
Do we know who owns this property? Do we have to find out who owns this property?
I think, and again, just to emphasize that the Watson Straits is a big problem. If you take a walk down there, there's a lot of erosion.
Tracy, you know about this Watson Straits.
Yeah, it's right up behind my house. My property abuts Watson Straits. So a couple of things with Watson Straits, some things that I've wondered about and some things I wanted to ask Steve about, because you maintain Wendell. So Watson Straits is a road that is owned by Lake Wyola Association, but maintenance of it has been abandoned. I believe back in 2008, before my time, but I had found some paperwork that showed that road was abandoned. So it's not maintained. So it kind of, in some ways acts like a flume off a window, because, the top of it is just a big wide road and there's no, there's nothing to stop the water. I also, just an aside, somebody who lives up there whose literal property address is Watson Straits, and it's not maintained anymore. So that's an issue too. I know also that Dave Brooks up the road here bought property up there. My understanding is with a distinct intention of making sure Watson Straits stays accessible. Because I've had thoughts about, like, let's just turn Watson Straits into a forest. Let's plant some trees. That would be like ideal if we could do that. But I think we have to look into some legalities around those two issues. The guy who bought property there, because there's electrical up there. It's weird. You walk down the road. If you went further down, James, you would have seen that there's an electric pole just like seeming in the middle of the trees. It's weird, with a box on it. I had problems, my septic system failed the first year I lived here because of all the water coming off of up there. I had to get, a lot of work done to get that fixed. The other question that I have, Steve, it would be super helpful if you knew this. There is an intermittent stream that comes down from up there, and it comes down. I'm at 82. So Steve, you know where my house is. You know where Brenda lives? 50, 52, 53. That, like, her house is the exact same house as mine, same shape, but it's like a greenish house. Who's it next door to?
It's on the corner of Pine and Shore.
Yeah, across the street on the opposite side of the road. And the drainage ditch last year was like a waterfall coming down from that property. Did you see this, Steve? No, you haven't noticed it. Okay, but there's there's an intermittent stream that's coming from, it's got across Wendell, or it's under Wendell. It might be an underground stream. But the Conservation Commission was pretty positive that I think actually they are positive it's an intermittent stream. And I think they might have been told that by FERCog. I can find out for sure that they had determined that it wasn't stormwater coming down from behind Brenda's house, but it was an intermittent stream, which has different, you can't mitigate it like you do stormwater. Because it's a stream, it requires like conservation stuff. It's just more complex. I feel like that's a key part to the Shore Drive issues. It's what causes the problems on Pine Drive, and then lots of silt going into the lake. In two directions, down Pine Drive and down Shore, and then in culverts that go into the lake. So Steve, have you seen any major water through the spring up there around that area which would be, I don't think Watson, I don't think that would be Watson Straits. I think that would be further going towards the corner by going towards the camp there.
We have one culvert just south of Watson Straits, and we have one maybe 100 feet north of it. But the one that's north of it's dry 90-something% of the time, and we don't have anything else to the corner, so it's not coming from the road.
Well, it sounds like if we're identifying projects, this is what I'm hearing. Tell me if I'm wrong. If we're identifying projects, this issue on Watson Straits is a high priority. And water that's coming from Wendell Road down the Laurels continues to be a high priority. And we could put those two projects on our list of things that we would approach, as a primary recommendation. Does that summarize what I've been hearing?
Can I ask a question that Jim mentioned? He said something about I don't know if it's one of the same culverts that Steve was just talking about, but he said something about 20 feet above where there's a large erosion site on Watson's. There's the culvert. Is that culvert open, or is it plugged? Do we know the condition of that culvert?
Okay, it's 20 feet south of the Watson Straits entrance. It's right there. It's one of the ones that was referred to. And I took a look at it, and didn't crawl down and look all the way through, but it was open on both ends.
Okay.
So that and it appears active.
Okay, good.
I'm going to suggest that that's the water that's coming through to behind Brenda's. And I remember, Jennifer, you may remember back too, that might have been that culvert remember the guy Paul that lived in that greenhouse? Yeah, I think that might be all in the same area. I think there might be a culvert and an intermittent stream, because I'm telling you what, the water that comes down there, my daughter had a friend visiting from Boston area, and he was taking pictures of it and sending it to his family. He's like, Rebecca has a waterfall on her street. And it's what it would look like. It looks like a waterfall at certain times of the year. Granted, he lives in the city, but.
So this is what sort of got me thinking in the very beginning. This is a system, right? It's a system that involves things that happen at the top of the hill, Wendell Road, and probably even above Wendell Road, and then a system that goes all the way down to the lake. So if we approach it that way, that's a perfect example of how public and private partnership, which is the two, or now we have a private owner perhaps, whatever the parties are, that would be necessary to address this whole system and what its impact is could be a big recommendation of this task force to the select board, for example. We can't troubleshoot all the solutions, in this meeting necessarily, but I'm thinking that identifying the major projects is the first task. Jim.
Okay, that I'd just like to now talk about the Locks Pond side.
Oh, yeah, before we move on. So someone mentioned, things about the intermittent stream and understanding water. One recommendation that comes up a lot in the FERCog report is the need for an engineering study. And I keep bristling at that suggestion because, and I'm not saying I'm against it. I don't even know about it. All I know is we have so many studies and they're super expensive. And can we make interventions with Steve's expertise, with Bob's expertise, with Jim's expertise, all of our expertise, that could get a better bang from our buck? Or is that silly because we really need the input of an engineer to make those determinations? So I know Tom had a hand up, Eric's hand just went up. Jim, I think your hand is up from before.
Well, I'd like to get back to it. Yeah.
All right, so
I'll take it down right now.
Well, we'll do Tom and Eric and then Jim.
Jim, can you please let me know, did you walk Wendell all the way from the top at the corner with Locks Pond? Or how far down? You said you walked down Wendell.
I walked down Wendell. I took the conservation trail over to where it intersects Wendell. It's where there's a big kind of sharp turn.
By Ames Haven or Ames. I guess my point was only
it's near there. It's the conservation path. There's a path that goes from the boat launch all the way to Wendell. It's just a trail.
Right. So you didn't walk up like the super steep part of Wendell.
No, I didn't take that turn. I just went straight onto the road and headed north.
Okay, because it was just interesting to me in the report that it didn't seem to mention much about that portion of Wendell except for the possible spring about 800 feet north of Freeman Road. Is it true that Wendell doesn't really seem to be posing a problem to the Wyola watershed until closer to the Laurels and down by Watson Straits? Or are there, okay. And I thought Steve was going to be my follow-up question to Jim, whether that's kind of where the problem zone begins. I just wanted to clarify that for myself. Thanks.
No, but I have walked that section of road from Wendell leaving Locks Pond.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot of water that flows through there. It's pretty well controlled, but again, that with push outs and little retention areas, and the town's doing, I think, a good job there. But at the bottom of where I'm talking about the conservation trail coming in, there, if you go in a few hundred feet, there's a stream that does feed into Lake Wyola.
Right. Yeah, that long straight stretch of Wendell
all
at the
the
bottom
water
of the
coming
hill goes to Southbrook, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have Eric
Thanks.
and then Stephen.
So my quick question would just be, I mean, it seems to me we have to sort of define what our goals are. That is to say, what are our goals? Are our goals to have no water coming off the town roads going into the lake, or to have that done in a fashion that doesn't bother people? Or I mean, what are we shooting for here? And it seems to me that might answer the question whether or not you need an engineering study. Or I mean, the trouble is water runs downhill. So I mean, what are you gonna do? It's gonna keep going, and how do we control it? I think that's the question. I mean, is the question obviously doesn't go into people's backyards or whatever, but can it not go into the lake? I mean, for example, I mean, are we saying it can't do that? I'm just raising the general question of what do we do with it?
I think I'll just hop in. No, we can't keep all water out of the lake. My sense of some of the ways that it was discussed in the FERCog report, which I agree with, is whatever we can do to reduce the sedimentation that goes into the lake. Right, so
Right.
water is going to flow, but there are things that can be done that address the amount of sediment that's being
Mhm.
added to the lake as a result of that flow. Tracy's hand and then Jim's.
Yes, so yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. Water runs downhill and it's gonna go trying to get to the lake. It's its goal. The old what we need to do to keep it from impacting people's properties, because I think it's a twofold thing here. Too. We're talking about damage to people's properties as well as sediment in the lake. And if you in the FERCog report, they have all kinds of different ways in which that can happen. There's retention basins, there's water bars that dissipate the water. Instead of it being concentrated in one area, it makes it go off the road in more areas, so there's less concentration, and flows into wetland gardens or forested areas where it will perk slowly as opposed to rushing. Permeable ground, you don't want to have, asphalt driveways are something that, aren't great when you've got water flow. So there's ways that those things can be done, but then the engineering piece comes in because they can get into those finer details of like, I don't even have the terms, but like flow rates and pitches of the road and how many inches to raise the road and how high the profile should be and which way it should be pitched, left or right. Drainage ditches, then it gets there's when the engineers come in, because we could go out there with our shovels and picks and be like, oh, well, let's, do this or that. And then all of a sudden we realize, well, we just fix this over here and now we got a problem over there. So
Jim.
Okay, no, the water does need to get into the lake. I just want it to get to the lake slower, so that if it does percolate into the ground and it still gets into the lake, it's just not going to carry the sediments. And so that's the way I've been thinking about it, some way to slow the water down so the sediments don't carry it into the lake. Because we want the water in the lake or else we don't have a lake. So.
Stephen.
To answer Tom's question, what happens on Wendell starting at my house is that the water from my house to what I would use, I refer still as Patsy's house, the one on the very bottom of the hill. So everything from my house to Patsy's, the water heads east down towards through the woods to the beaver ponds, and then enters South Brook, and then it goes to Lake Wyola, where when you get from Patsy's to the Pine Brook intersection, all the water heads west towards the lake.
Thank you. That helps me visualize it.
So, okay, so we'll hold off on, I don't think we know enough now to say we want an engineering study, we don't want an engineering study, or for what purpose, or but I would like to hear Jim's feedback on Locks Pond Road. I'd also like to look at all the different things that were found around Lake Wyola Association roads. And we can't go on forever, and it's 8:25. So let's do those two things and see where we stand. So what about Locks Pond Road, Jim?
Okay. The reports are very good of what they're talking about. That I think both reports refer to the west side of Locks Pond Road, or the uphill side. And that the trench on the uphill side that runs along the road is very shallow and not lined. And that, I think, was in both reports saying that was an issue. And walking it today, yes, it's very shallow. that trench. In some cases, you could argue it no longer really exists. So that and we have to talk about this, but if one goal or a target would be to try to get the water into the stream rather than into the lake, the trench on the west side might help move more water into the stream. Now we have to, that's a Conservation Committee question probably of adding water like that into the Mill River there. But there are several other issues because there are a number of culverts that carry water from the uphill side down into the association side and then just deposit the water at the top of the hill on the association side of the road. And there's one case is just south of Randall Road. There's a culvert that carries water in. And if you go to the downhill side of the culvert, the conservation property, kind of going down to the boat launch, there are signs of erosion coming out of that culvert. That there's bare rocks. There's no sediment deposits there. It may have been the storm last week that just scoured everything, and a few light rains will put some sediment back in it. But it goes into the conservation area, it gets dispersed, but provides an example. There are other culverts that Sue Hoyle has done a tremendous job of replicating the Nile Delta. That the water comes in through the culvert and then she has it dispersing into a dozen different channels go down the hill by her house. And she's done that by herself. But then the water hits King Road, and that's the area that we don't maintain anymore because all the water coming through there. So that, again, in detail, there's a lot to talk about, but I'll just leave it there that if there could be deeper trenches on the west side of Locks Pond Road to hold water in there and to carry it, and to find out if it carrying it towards the Mill River, Sawmill River, that would solve a lot of problems. There would be much less water headed towards the lake if that were the case. Just a little footnote, and there are several driveways that come in from the west side. And given the sand and pea gravel deposited on the road, I'd suggest that they're just washing onto the road, that it's not making any water control going on there. And that's the folks that have the driveways. They don't seem to be diverting water into the trenches next to the road very much.
Thank you, Jim, for walking both locations. Stephen.
Yeah, so if you're at Great Pines and heading south up Locks Pond, there are 4 culverts that all have intermittent to regular streams running under them. And when that hill is full of water, that's when you find the scout. When it rains 1.5 inches or 2 inches or more, that culvert you're talking about, it is rushing.
Yeah.
That one, I mean, there's nothing I can do unless you want me to dump crap loads of riprap in there. That one, it doesn't happen often, but when it runs, it runs. And you're incorrect about the 2 driveways across from Great Pines. They were both graded and water barred in the last 2 days because I drove by there today. And as far as running the water down, making that ditch deeper along the west side all the way down to the Mill River, I've talked to a former Conservation Commission member about this a number of times, because that was as soon as the culvert went in and the MAS put in that big giant riprap down on the outlet side, my immediate thought was, hey, let's run our water down through there instead of into the lake. But I've been told because of King Road and where it goes across by the A-frame, those are wetlands. I can't stop the water from going through there, even though the
Yeah.
water runs 6 inches from the A-frame. I can't stop the water from it has to go that way. I can
Oh.
try and encourage it a little bit to go towards the Mill River, but I can't make it stop going under the road.
Yeah. No, I appreciate all the problems you're facing
And
there.
then the
all
one
by it.
right across from Great Pines where those two driveways dump, I would love to tie that whole thing together, except that there's a blacktop driveway that I can't put a culvert under because there's not, and that's the one that has the stream or the spring that feeds, and that's the one that ends up with Sioux.
Yeah,
But I can't put a culvert under that driveway unless
okay. No, I don't. I just was walking it today, looking at it, so you know much better what the problems are there. But it does when by the A-frame, when it gets down to Lake Road, that's when another problem occurs, because all of that, it may be an intermittent stream, but somehow it has to get across Lake Road. And I believe there's that,
yeah, now it's just
construction going on right there.
filling that new foundation right up.
yeah, yes, they have a problem.
Tracy,
Thank
oh,
you.
sorry. Tracy, did you have a comment?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment on the top of Great Pines. So I know across the street, the guy there, he put in a new culvert. We made that ditch bigger. I think this was like back 2020, maybe 2019. Steve, if you remember. And one of the issues, and I don't know if it can be the road pitches towards Great Pines. It pitches that way rather than
We can't change that.
I'm not saying you can change it. I'm just saying that that's an issue. So, and it's something that it can't be, because I've talked to Steve about this. It can't be solved by
20.
changing the pitch of the road there, because that's been an idea that, Steve's reaction was because he's been asked to do this, and and it's been being asked for since I've lived here. It can't be done, so something different has to be done at the top of Great Pines, because clearly Great Pines down to Lake, that whole thing is, and then going down to Bob's property. What they have, the water bars have helped tremendously on Great Pines, and they got some pretty deep water bars. Those are, and I have friends over there, and they say that they're really working great, and because they made them so deep, they're holding up. And Steve has been awesome in not complaining about plowing there, going over the water bars, because it's probably a little weird. They're in the Laurels too. They also have diverted the water, but there's just such a small amount of land there on the left-hand side of Great Pines for water to go into, which kind of kills the beginning of King Road. We've actually made it, it's not passable anymore. We put there's a sign up that says that you can't drive down it anymore. So I'm wondering if that end of King Road has some more possibilities for usage for water. Because we blocked it off. It doesn't seem to bother anybody in terms of people who live there. So I'm wondering about that. And also that is a great place for either a retention pond, which would be on private property. We'd have to ask for permission, or a water garden. But I think a water garden is probably not enough with the amount of water. And Steve, is that also the spot you're talking about in terms of diverting into the Mill River, which you can't do? Is that where you're speaking of, right there at the top of Great Pines before King?
It's a little bit further down. It's where that blacktop driveway is that I can't.
I'll walk down there and look. I'm not picturing it.
It's the one that it has the arborvitae. It's on the west side. It has the arborvitae hedge, and it used to have the two white lampposts that are now gone.
Okay.
I can't, because if I could cut that driveway and put in a culvert, then the water could go, if the Conservation Commission would be for it, we could make the water run all the way down past Morse Hill, both driveways, and go through that riprap into the Mill River and skip the lake
That
altogether.
would be awesome. That would be, I
That
think we
would
should
be awesome,
list
yeah.
that as-
That's what I was saying, that I talked to a former Conservation Commission member, and those two intermittent streams can't be stopped. The one that runs,
yeah, there's weird rules
the
around
one
it.
that runs to Deb Widers and the one that runs to the A-frame. I can't stop them from going through those culverts.
So again, I'm just gonna hop in again. When they have a catch-22 like that, right? Where, so we have all this water and it's having a conservation impact on Lake Wyola and other places, but we can't divert something because there's a wetland. Does anyone know whether the Conservation Commission has provisions for, you know, outside of the regular regulations mitigating, you know, approaches? Or are you just like, that's it, the door is shut, you can't, there's no way to discuss it?
That's what we have Bob Douglas for.
Okay, so we had Jim, Tom, and then Eric with their hands up. Can't hear you, Jim.
There. Forgot to put my hand down. Sorry.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see. Okay, Tom.
Two things. I was only going to say one thing, but what you just asked, I believe, but Bob will be able to confirm that the Conservation Commission might have some sort of approval authority for cases, for special cases. And somebody, I forget who, just talked about the portion of King Road that is not maintained anymore. And I did find it here in the report, and I'm sorry if somebody already said this and I didn't catch it, but they do mention in the FERCog report that that particular site could be considered as an area for a multi-BMP treatment train, with the only caveat that there are some private landowners who would have to give consent beyond the LWA for that particular little portion. But it is an identified area already about where there could be some concentrated effort. That's under the, it's on page 58 of the report where they talk about that area.
Okay, Eric? Where's Eric? Oh,
Well, it sounds to me like, here I am. It sounds to me like we have to ask the Conservation Commission again very directly. Here's the plan, A, B, C, D. Can we do that? And if we can't, what can we do? And
right.
it doesn't seem to me that that's been done. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem to me it's been done. And it seems like a great plan if it works.
That's right. Stephen.
Yeah, so Eric, I have not brought this up to the current Concom. I've only been speaking to someone who's a former member. I haven't formally asked the Conservation Commission if I could do that.
Right.
And the other thing is that if I own that house at the bottom of King Road where we're talking about, my house is in a bowl at the bottom. Why do I want you bringing all that water down to my house? I mean, it's just one house on that section because I have to sand it every time there's a storm, and it sits right at the bottom of the bowl. I don't want water running through my house.
I don't think it would be enough just to bring the water down there.
Yeah.
I think something else has to happen to it. Tracy.
Those folks have actually been very kind, and they gave permission for that water bar to turn the water into that area where I don't know if the rain garden has been really maintained, because you got to get the silt out. You know, you put plants in that can handle silt and can handle a lot of water, but it does need to be cleaned out periodically. And that's something that Lake Wyola Association, I don't know if they're doing that over there for them, because it does seem to me that if we are going to be asking residents to do things like this, then Lake Wyola Association is going to have to take responsibility for maintaining it, because that's, you know, adding that added extra thing. But I think a retention basin there, I mean, I'm referring to being on the road, literally like what I was speaking about with Watson Straits, like trying to turn that into a forest, turning King Road, that end of King Road, which belongs to the Lake Wyola Association, into a large retention pond. There's pretty good, it's a 22-foot wide road. Right now it's got, stuff growing all over, but it's a good, and it goes in, it's pretty deep into the, I think it's like kind of behind that house, but I mean, again, that would require definitely an engineer, because we would want to be sure we didn't screw it up and then have these people want to sue it. We would have to be sure it was tight, but it's a spot that belongs to Lake Wyola Association. So
That
So-
road's 22 feet wide? How, it's barely,
it's supposed to be.
It is about 10 and a half feet wide. When I back down that thing in the dark in the wintertime when it's icy, I barely get in and out of there. There's no 22 feet
It's
anywhere.
supposed to be. So if we went to the middle of the road and we went 11 feet out to either side, that is Lake Wyola property. It doesn't mean that stuff hasn't grown on it or somebody's tried to encroach on it. There's lots of problems like that around here, Steve. But based on the map, it's 22 feet wide.
Okay,
But
Jim.
Tracy, I just wanted to better locate the retention pond. So that if this is south of King Road, that the area that kind of is wet and mucky now.
I'm really bad with those kind of directions. I do left.
Headed towards
So
the
if you're
center
going
of town.
down Great Pines on the left-hand side, that side
Oh,
of King.
that on. Okay.
Yes, because it used to be a road that went all the way through, but you notice there's a sign on the end of it that says no access. It says something that means don't go down it.
No.
It used to be, but because so much water was going in there, it couldn't be maintained. So
Right.
I think it was in 2019, we made a decision as a board to just nix it and put there's like something across the road and a sign that says no access. And
Right.
so that is Lake Wyola Association property that's just not a road anymore.
Well, the part that's closed, right? There's,
Yeah, the closed
from that side, there's one house on that road on the
Mhm.
south side, and then across from that gully is other houses, so that you can't get to from Great Pines. Yeah. It does drain down, so that I don't know that it's a great retention pond site. But we might, again, with the Conservation Committee permission, might be able to encourage more water to get into that drainage.
Yeah, and FERCog is saying multiple ways in that section. So I interpreted that as being that they may be considering a retention pond as being one of those. A rain garden's already there, but like what else do they mean? So a retention pond may be, I see it as a possibility, but I'm not an engineer, so.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we move on a little bit. It's 8:45, and we take. So what I'm identifying is two different systems. One is the system of Wendell Road, Watson Straits, and the Laurels. Another is the system of Locks Pond and King and Great Pines. And that we focus on these two and there, the water is begins up from town-owned roads, but then it flows over or through or under and then over these Lake Wyola roads and properties, which make their own contribution to it, right? So I think FERCog has identified that the materials that Lake Wyola Association is using, the sand and gravel is, really just washing straight into the lake. It's identifying choices that individual homeowners have made with their driveways and swales and berms that aren't helping matters. So these systems have like 4 or 5 different solutions within each system. And some of them are going to involve the Lake Wyola Association, some will involve private homeowners, some will involve the town. Some are maintenance, issues, ongoing maintenance. I think that FERCog said that there are multiple outfalls along Lake Wyola that are eroded, and that there are no catch basins, pipes, swales, they're largely absent. So, there are, we need to deal with the water as it flows off these town roads, and then what are going to happen on the Lake Wyola Association properties and roads that are going to continue to reduce this sediment and, as Jim said, slow everything down. So I think that from my reading of it, as we even said last week, although we've gotten into the details a little bit more, that we start to treat these two systems as our main focus, and then start to identify the very specific things within those systems that are going to involve all these parties, right? Highway Department, Conservation Commission, Lake Wyola Association, individual homeowners, and then start to see how that all hangs together for a proposal. Does that make sense? Eric?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I would only suggest, and what I would do personally is, I'd love it if we just had a day when we actually walk these properties. I mean, I think at least for me, and I suspect for other people too, some of it seems a little bit vague to people about what we're talking about. And I think just to walk as a committee, to walk around these properties would be very helpful. That's all. But I think your idea is great.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I have that, which we'll address before we adjourn. Tracy?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We're here talking about all this stuff that we all have seen and we live near, and yeah, Eric, and it's like, what? So when you see it, it's very helpful. When I did that the first time, so this is just looking ahead, I know, but we're talking about the fact that we individual homeowners, and FERCog does mention this in the report that, clearly permission has to be given by everybody. I think it's super important. I talked to a conservation commission person asking about site visits, former person, and how does that work and so forth. I feel that the approach to homeowners, like we might identify in our own minds what would be nice if there was a swale here, or whatever, a water bar here that would be helpful. I think that when we go through the walkthrough, we have to be very cautious and be clear to anybody who might come walking out on the road. What are you guys doing? Looking at my property, this and that. If we're walking, that we're just analyzing the water flow. And then this is where I think it's really important that professionals get involved, because when we're going to get to a point where because eventually the water has to get to the lake. Some we're going to be able to offload before it gets to the lake. And the more we can do that, the better, because then the less private homeowners we have to ask to do things. But when we get to that part, I think that really needs to be handled by professionals that can, give a pitch to people like, if we can do this, and we know we can make sure that your property is not going to be damaged, and because it's going to be a tough sell to people.
I agree with that.
Jen?
Yeah.
Can Steve, he gave a suggestion about putting a culvert underneath somebody's paved driveway, and I'm trying to picture where that is. Can he restate what that looks like, what area that is? So, because that seemed to be a popular idea for a lot of people, but it obviously involves, it's a problem because of a paved driveway, but would Steve mind restating that idea? I didn't get all of it, and I'm trying to picture it. Or is it too late?
So if you're standing at the bank of mailboxes across from Great Pines, and you walk north down the hill, the next driveway you come to is a paved driveway, and just south of that, but closer to the mailboxes, is where there's a spring that is running constantly, and that goes under the road and dumps. Is it Sue Hoyle? Is her house the one that has all the cool ditches and things?
That's Sue Hoyle.
So it's right across from her house, or very close to it.
And what road is she on?
She's on Locks Pond. But
Okay,
it's the next, if you start walking towards the lake on Locks Pond, if you start at the bank of mailboxes, it's the next driveway on your left. And it's paved.
thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna suggest that I'm gonna try to write something up that codifies, not minutes wise, but codifies this discussion and identifies these two systems, starting at the top, meaning Wendell Road or above it, and going all the way down to Lake Wyola owned roads, Pine Drive, Shore Drive, to the lake, and do the same thing for this Locks Pond system, so that we're starting to assemble what begins to appear like two projects. And then I'm going to suggest that we have our next meeting as a field trip, if we can do that. And I don't know what you all think about that. Hi, Bob.
Hey there.
I just have one more thing to add to the Wendell Road side that it just dawned on me that I think we need to take a look at, is that up from Wendell Road, you know, not north and south thing here, but like, you know, uphill, the wooded, if you're walking down Wendell Road from the corner by the Pinebrook camp, walking up Wendell Road, left-hand side, the woods up back there, somewhere up back there, there was clear cutting done. It's my understanding. That's one of the reasons why my septic system failed. My next door neighbor had problems. It went down that way. So I just don't know from an engineering standpoint if that's something like we should look at, because that could have created different pathways for water, or if it's not even an issue anymore because it's all grown in. I don't know, but I know that that was a major issue 10 years ago.
Okay, I'll put that in my little write-up. Stephen,
That one doesn't run anymore. It hasn't
Oh.
run for probably 5, 6, 7, unless we get a 2-inch rain. That logging road is now, it's dry.
that's good news. So how do y'all feel about a field trip the next time we meet?
Sure.
Sounds good.
How do we manage that if we're starting at 7?
Bring flashlights.
Cell phones.
We'd have to do it on a Saturday day or Sunday or something before the snow flies, which is coming.
Yeah, right. No, hopefully next month is what I'm hoping.
Could we do something after work, say at like 4 o'clock?
Sounds good.
And I meant during the work week. Would that be an option for people?
Does that work for you, Stephen?
That's fine
Yeah.
too.
So an afternoon field trip, would we do both locations on the same field trip, or one week and another the next time we meet?
Do them both.
Do them both? Okay. Well,
I'd say.
so when is that? When does that want to happen? In September? September, well, it was a month in between our meetings last time. And if we did that again, it would be like September 12th. I'll be out of town on the 5th.
Sounds good to me.
What time did we say?
4 o'clock.
That would be a little tight for me, but the 13th is the Tuesday's better for me. I don't know. Is Monday? I will rearrange my schedule if I need to, but is Tuesday better than Monday for anybody?
I think when we arranged our meetings, Thursday was the day that everybody could meet.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's how we came to Thursdays originally. So would 4:30 make it better for you than 4?
4:30 would make it better. I can make
Can-
it for 4:30 for sure.
Can that work for people,
What
4:30?
date again?
We're talking about the 12th of September.
I may be in Chicago, but that's my problem.
No, that would be our loss.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Jim was there.
Let's see, what about the fall? As I said, I'll be out of town on the 5th. How about the 19th of September?
It's a 2-week trip. I'm going to see my grandson. So
Okay.
Well, Jim, you've actually seen, but I mean, the reason we've honed in on these places is because of you. So I guess, except that it'd be nice to have you there showing us stuff. But maybe, Steve, I was meant to say Jim, if I said Steve. But Steve, maybe do you think that you would be able to be a good guide for both of these areas for us?
He says yes. All right, so you want to go back to the 12th then? September 12th, which is a Thursday at 4:30.
It's okay
Good.
with me.
Will this be instead of, or in addition to another meeting?
I guess
Like-
we'll determine that after our field trip and see
Okay.
if we, yeah,
I get it.
And where are we going to meet? Which
good
place?
idea. Where should we meet?
I'm thinking about parking.
yes.
Yeah, that's the only other. So we could park at the association hall and
I
Every-
can,
there.
open the hall if you want, and we could meet there.
yeah, and then we can walk from there for that side, and then we can hop in and share cars and drive
Yeah.
Great Pines in a couple of cars and drive people back.
Yeah, and we did that with the FERCog field trip. We did something like that with them.
Yeah, that's a
So-
good idea.
Yeah,
Okay,
Charlene, I don't know if we need to go inside the building because we're just like gathering as a place to move from, but of course, if it's raining, then we might want to do that.
If it's
It's an
raining, we'll
option.
just have a regular meeting.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of parking at the Brightwater Bog area at the top of the Laurels. I don't know what would make the least amount of walking from our cars, because that's on Wendell Road itself.
Yeah.
Just as an idea.
I vote for the hall just because it's doesn't take away parking from people who might want to use the bog, you know. Okay, so we're gonna meet at Lake Wyola Association parking lot at 4:30 on the 12th. And we'll take it from there. Is it good?
That's good.
All good? Okay. And I will try to write something up that starts to localize these two systems that we want to focus our attention in on, and going all the way down to the lake, right? So not just, you know, town-owned, Lake Wyola alone, but treat them as a system.
Mhm.
Okay.
It might be good if we told the Conservation Commission we were doing this too. They don't have to go, but they might want to go. You know, they might want to see it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and
I
Beth
don't,
did.
just as, you know what I mean? Just throw it out there. So here we are, kind of thing.
Well, Bob's on the Conservation Commission.
There you go.
Be there.
Bob, when is their next meeting? Do you know?
I think it's next week, actually, next Thursday.
Okay. Well, Beth reached out to me and she wanted to be, is Beth the commissioner now, like the head of the Conservation Commission?
She's the
Yeah.
chairperson.
Yeah, so she reached out wanting to stay in touch and inform, so I can reach out to her and let her know about this and see if she,
Yeah.
say, Bob, you'll be there, but she might want to come too. I'll reach out to her.
Uh,
All right.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so then the only other thing we need to do is have a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Oh, I just had
Oh.
one thing. As this will be a meeting, and there might be discussion and deliberation, can you post it as a meeting?
I can, is that, I don't know, it seems like that should be fine, but as
Yeah,
an open meeting, then anybody can come on
No,
a
you better
field trip.
post it.
Yeah,
Post it.
so I'll
Good
just
idea.
post it as I would normally, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
So
and it will
Bob,
be a,
what- sorry.
I would
what-
post it as a field trip and I'll list the meeting place and et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, and that would
Next
give us the
week we can
ability to deliberate, decide things, and
Yes.
come up with ideas that would be recorded in the minutes. Yep.
That's good. Tracy?
That's what I was wondering, is it because that was something that a conservation person said to me, when they go on site visits, they can't deliberate, so there's certain questions, there's only certain things you can say, and I was just thinking like this field trip's gonna be really hard because we really can't discuss things, but Bob just gave the solution. We can.
No, you got
post
to.
it.
General rule is post everything.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
then,
Keeps you out of trouble,
really,
doesn't it?
seriously.
Yeah.
We, you know, I've known for years as chair of different committees, it's like, Just post it, then you're covered.
Okay,
All right, great.
that sounds good.
Before
right,
we
so-
adjourn, can I just make a motion if it's necessary? I don't know if we have to call it a motion, but are we gonna kick the Harvard, Massachusetts sedimentation controls to our next meeting? Because I don't want to belabor anything tonight that we don't have to.
Yeah, I have, this is an email that Bob sent to me with a photograph of things that Harvard are doing. Or not, I mean, the town of Harvard, and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can kick that. So when we get to approaches of how to address some of the issues in these locations, is that okay with you, Bob?
Oh, absolutely. I just
Yeah,
wanted
it was just a
to
resource.
throw it out there. Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so motion to adjourn.
I make
So
motion.
moved.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, do we all vote now?
Yeah.
Everybody's got to vote. Okay, so Bob,
Aye.
aye, Eric,
Sure.
Tracy,
Hi.
Aye.
Charlene,
Aye.
Jim,
aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. Stephen.
Aye.
Stephen's deliberating. He's not sure he wants to adjourn. Okay, thank you all. I think we're in a good spot. I'm feeling good about this.
Night all.
Good, thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you.
Well, I have to turn off the recording.